So it was in Tibet, and it was in the 2000s, in this case in 2008, where I had the opportunity to go to one of the most remote monasteries. It took 6 days out of Lhasa just to get to the monastery. And once we were there, the only way to get to the monastery was through the local mode of transportation, a yak, which is an amazing way to travel if you've never traveled by yak, up the mountain trail to the monastery. And it was in this place where I first encountered some of the nuns who I sensed were of advanced age, but I didn't know for sure. Because on the one hand, they looked like they might be, but on the other hand, they didn't look like elderly people that I had encountered in the West. Their skin was taut, it wasn't baggy and saggy, their eyes were bright and clear. They had teeth, they had hair, sometimes they shave their hair, especially the women, shave their hair for convenience, for hygiene, but it's still growing. And so it was in this particular monastery where I asked one particular woman, "How old are you?" And I asked because the Mother Superior was able to provide the papers. Now, this is one of those places in this program I cannot show you her face for security and to honor and respect her privacy and her safety. Okay, but I'm going to tell you about her, and then we are going to look at a couple of other examples where I can show you their faces, and you're going to see the same thing. But it was in this particular woman, it was the first time, this is my tip-off, my clue, that longevity is possible in ways that we simply don't embrace in the West. We discount it, we call it a hoax or we call it a fake. But it's like those out-of-place artifacts. So many examples of advanced age are cropping up in so many places of the world. The anomalies are now beginning to tell a story, and the story is very different from the story that you and I probably have been led to believe in the past. The Tibetan nun that I'm talking about right now, when we saw her papers, what we saw is the confirmed date of her birth was 1885, all right? And the year that I was with her was the year 2005. We went back again in 2008. My first contact with her was in 2005. 1885 to 2005, that means I was looking into the eyes of a woman who's 120 years old. She did not look like 120 years old. She lived in a single room. She walked to the river every morning, down a hillside to bring up the water. She grew a lot of her own food in the vessels and the vases that were available to her. Basil, tomatoes, herbs that she would eat every day in a very, very minimal diet. She was good, healthy, strong, and vital. And that told me that something is happening with her that maybe is happening with other people. Well, interestingly, I asked her what was her secret, and she looked at me through the translator and she said one word: compassion. She said, that's what we learn in these monasteries. That is the essence of our Buddhist teachings. It's all about compassion. We'll see in a moment why compassion would have an effect of longevity. Before we do that, I want to show you a couple of other cases because I want you to see this isn't an anomaly. It wasn't long after I met this Tibetan woman that the national media ran a story about a woman in the Palestinian territories. And you're seeing her face on the screen right now because she made national news. This was on the Associated Press. This woman, when you look at her, ask yourself how old you think she is, because here's her story. She went shopping one day. She hadn't been out for a while. She had to go through a military checkpoint that she didn't have to go through before, didn't exist before. They looked at her papers, they said, your papers are expired. You have to go to the authorities and get some new papers. And that's when she made headlines, because when they checked back through her records, they found that her date of birth was 1888. And the woman you're looking at, in the year 2008, she is 120 years old. I'm not saying that she looks like she's in her 20s, but I think she looks really good for 120 years old. Her eyes are bright, her skin color is good, her teeth are good, she still has her hair. And I want to know, what is her secret? And she said the secret for her was the love that she had for her family, her children, her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren, her great-great-grandchildren. She said, they need me every day. What would they do without me? She said, I fix their meals, I help them with their schoolwork, I help them everything they're doing in their lives. I work in the garden so that I can prepare the food for them. She feels needed, and she loves her family, and she feels loved. That is a heart-based experience. All right? So that's two And these are women, and I wanted to find an example that was of a male. And it was only through the research I was able to find what I'm about to share with you. And I'm sharing it with you. And I believe this is factual because it was documented by the military, and it was also documented in an article in Time magazine early in the 20th century. The man that you're looking at right now has a very interesting history. His name is Li Qingyuan. The image that you're seeing is a photograph that was taken of him in 1927 by the Chinese military. He was at the residence having a meal with an army general at the time. He was born in Sichuan, China. He spent the early part of his life as an herbalist. He was a high-altitude herbalist, and he was also a martial artist. So he lived in high elevation, thin air, a minimal diet of very specific kinds of herbs, and he learned about the energy of the human body through martial arts. He enlisted in the Chinese military at a relatively late age. He was 72 years old when he enlisted as a cartographer, and he is documented as enlisting in the Chinese military in the year 1749. Now, the Chinese keep meticulous records, and that's why I trust these records. 1749, he left the military, and he went back to his home in the mountains after he served as a cartographer at the age of 97, and 3 years later, the military records sent him a congratulations on his 100th birthday. That was the year 1777. They sent him another congratulations on his 150th birthday, and the records show this very clearly, in the year 1827. And this is where it gets really, really interesting. They sent him another congratulations for his 200th birthday in the year 1877. He died May 6th, 1933. His birth date, now the two different dates, he said that his birth date was later. He said he was only born in 1736. The military records, however, show that he was born in 1677. So either one of these is showing a man of tremendously advanced age. His age at death, was either 197 or 256. And this borders on what are called biblical ages. When he died, he was 7 feet tall. He had accomplished 14 marriages over 11 generations, and by some estimates had as many as 180 children that were attributed to his marriages. Time magazine wrote an article on him, on Li, and actually did an obituary May 15th, 1933. They acknowledged the validity of his longevity. And in this article, they asked, what was the secret to his long life? Before he had died, he had shared that secret. The secret, he said, was all about the heart. The secret was to keep a quiet heart. Now, this is not typical. I don't think it's the oldest, because the time that I have spent in Tibet, the monks and the nuns have told me that there are yogis that are much older. But I'm not sharing those with you here, and here's the reason why. I cannot document it. I cannot say to you factually, as a scientist, those yogis are actually 400 and 500 years old. And the truth is that the lives that I am told they live don't sound like very exciting lives. They live lives of ascetics, very little clothing, they don't move very much, they spend a lot of time in meditation, and their bodies they're strong and they're healthy, but they're not as engaged in everyday life. If I'm going to live 200, 300, 400 years old, I'd like to be very engaged in everyday life. From the time I was 5 years old, I told my mom that I would be in this world. I'd be on Earth for 200 years. I'm on the 200-year plan. And while Mom used to laugh when I would tell her that, she later in life began to take it very seriously, and she would say that to me. When it came time to wish me happy birthday, she would say, I could wish you happy birthday. She said, but you're on the 200-year plan, so I have a lot more opportunities to do just this. The point is, can we live beyond this traditional 70 to 100 years? Would we want to? And a lot of times when I ask people if they want to, what they say to me is they don't want to, because to them, old age equates to suffering. Old age equates to the body breaking down and the things that they've seen in their lifetimes. And I want to say to you, right now, it doesn't have to be that way. The science is showing us this, and the indigenous traditions are telling us this. What was the common link between the three people of advanced age that we just talked about? The Palestinian woman, the Tibetan nun, and Lee. What was the common theme? And I gave it away already because I'm not good at keeping secrets. I gave it away. Each of them had a feeling. The Palestinian woman felt love for her family, and she felt that she was loved. The Tibetan nun felt the feeling of compassion. It's a heart-based experience. Lee said the secret was a quiet heart, feeling the feelings of calmness and serenity in his life. So the common thread for all of these, all of them are linked to a heart-based experience. And you say, well, why would a heart-based experience create this kind of longevity? And the answer to that is the secret to where we're going right now. It probably comes as no surprise that a heart-based experience would have some effect on our longevity. But the mechanism is what I want to talk to you about right now. Because what you have just learned in the last episode, the ability to harmonize your heart and your brain in a very precise way, in addition to all of the benefits that we've already shared, is the underlying trigger to unlock the potential of longevity and vitality, healthy longevity in your life. And it all begins, not surprisingly, with our DNA and the chromosomes that we have talked about earlier in this program. Each time our cells divide, something really, really interesting begins to happen, among the many interesting things that happen within the chromosomes themselves. A telomere you can think of in just the way you would think of the shoelaces on your tennis shoes. Okay, if you look at the ends of the shoelaces on your tennis shoes, they typically have a little plastic cap over the end that keeps them from fraying and makes it possible for you to lace them through the eyes on your shoes. Well, the ends of your DNA, your telomeres, are the equivalent of those little plastic caps. And every time your cell divides, the chromosomes in the division process, they are incapable of completing division all the way to the end of the DNA. So what that means is, with each cell division, a little piece of the DNA breaks off. It's brittle, it breaks away, and it's lost. That is what the telomeres do. They are the buffer so that what breaks off is the telomere and not the information in the DNA itself. So, when one cell divides into two, you lose a little bit of telomeres in the end. That's okay, you've got a lot left. Two divided into four, you lose a little bit more. You've got a lot left, but not as much as you did before. And you see where this is going. It goes on and on for a finite period of time until we reach a point where the telomere is so short or it is so weak, it can no longer protect the rest of the DNA. And when your cell reaches that point, we call it senescence, we call it old age, and eventually we call it death. Because the cell cannot preserve the information, the DNA cannot preserve the information, and because of that, it will allow itself to divide with bad information. All right, so that's the mechanism. Telomere shortening, it's directly linked to stress in our lives. And I want to say this to you directly. I'm going to read directly from the scientific document, so you know it's not my opinion. I want you to hear exactly what it is they're saying about this. In the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, the title of this research article, it tells the whole story. Listen to the title: Accelerated Telomere Shortening in Response to Life Stress. What they're saying is chronic stress erodes the telomeres, it impairs the DNA replication, and it accelerates the aging. So this is peer-reviewed science saying in open paper what we're talking about right now. It is the stress of life. It can come from many places. It can come from the job, it can come from work, it can be emotional stress, it can be environmental stress, it can be psychological stress, it can be a healing crisis. There are all kinds of stress. So it's not the stress, it's about how we interpret and how we deal with that stress. When we are born, we have a very high complement of telomeres. What scientists tell us is when we're born, we have about 8,000 base pairs of telomeres to begin with. By the time we're in our 30s, we have maybe half of that number, and by the time we're in our 60s, we have maybe about a third of that number, typically. But the good news is all that can change, and you can direct how it changes in your life. The lifetime of a telomere and the lifetime of a cell are generally accepted to be about 40 to 60 cell divisions. So 40 to 60 cell divisions is generally the lifetime of an average cell, and this is what scientists tell us. It is the limit of that lifetime. And the limit actually has a name. It's named after the man that discovered the limit. It is called the Hayflick limit. Hayflick limit. That is the number of times. The Hayflick limit defines how many times our cells can divide before they reach the point where the telomeres aren't working any longer. Interestingly, that Hayflick limit equates, if you take that number of cell divisions and how long they live, that equates to about 120 years of human life. So we're beginning to see why we do see people living up to 120 years. We don't see a lot after that because they have reached this Hayflick limit. The question is, can we increase that Hayflick limit? Are we bound to that limit? And the answer is yes, or we wouldn't be having this conversation. And the discovery in 2009 tells us why it's possible. In 2009, the Nobel Prize in Medicine and Physiology was awarded to 3 people, to Carol Greider, Elizabeth Blackburn, and Jack Szostak. They all worked together to discover an enzyme in the human body. That was just a few years ago. And they're still discovering things about the human body that we haven't known in the past. This new enzyme was mysterious at first. They found the enzyme. They weren't sure what the function was. But the only place they found the enzyme was hovering near the end of the telomeres. So they theorized maybe this enzyme has something to do with the telomeres, and if it does, maybe the enzyme has something to do with long life. So their discovery of this enzyme is what the Nobel Prize was awarded for. The name of the enzyme tells the whole story. It gives it away. Okay, the telomeres are what determine how long the cell can live and divide. The enzyme they discovered is called telomerase. And the purpose of this enzyme, the only purpose of the telomerase in our bodies, is to heal and repair the telomeres at the end of our DNA. The thing is, often our telomerase is not actively engaged in its greatest potential. It's dormant, or if not completely dormant, it is not as active as it can be. Well, what scientists found after they discovered the telomeres, they began looking into the function of the telomeres and the telomerase working together. And once again, not my words, I want to share with you the exact words of what it is that they found. The National Institutes of Health produced a series of articles in the year 2011. And I'm just going to share with you 2 direct sentences from that. Number 1, they're saying that the telomeres shorten with age. They say telomere length shortens with age. That is a fact. Okay, the next sentence is the key, because they say the rate of telomere shortening can be either increased or decreased by specific lifestyle factors. What that means is that you and I have the ability to make choices in our lives that will either accelerate the aging process, senescence, old age and death, or we make lifestyle choices that breathe life and activate these anti-aging hormones and the telomerase in our bodies. And some of these factors you already know. Of course, diet, exercise, lifestyle, you know about those things. But there's another factor now that you already know, but you may not realize is impacting the duration of your cell life. And that is the technique of heart-brain harmony that we just learned in the last episode. Because that technique of heart-brain harmony, as you activate that in your life, what it's doing is it's setting up the communication between your heart and your brain, and your breathing is telling your body that you're in a place that's safe, And that is redefining any stress that you may feel in your body. Remember, stress is one of the key factors to decreasing the length of the telomeres. So it's not just about meditating, and it's not just about saying a chant, although those things can help, but it's about creating this environment in our advanced and extended neural network that signals to our bodies that we are in a safe place where it is okay to put all the energy into the body, into the healing, the regeneration, and rejuvenation, rather than sending that energy in defense of the world around us through the stress of cortisol and adrenaline. I know it's a big idea. The bottom line is heart-brain harmony is a trigger for longevity. And what you're seeing on your screen right now, I didn't want you to just take my word for it. I want you to see this. You're looking at telomeres. These are photomicrographs of telomeres. I'm going to show you a before and after. This is a photograph of telomeres that are of advanced age. There aren't many of them left. They are the little pink areas that you're seeing. You're looking down at the end of a strand of DNA. Okay, and this is through the aging process. Now, the next image that you see is going to be precisely the same telomeres. However, the telomerase has been activated. And when it's activated, it will heal and reverse the aging process. And now you're seeing it right here. Look at this. That is the same telomere that now is rejuvenated. What you're seeing is anti-aging. You're seeing it real time in the DNA, and this is human DNA. What's possible in this slide is possible in your body. So modern science is now revealing, it's solving one of the deepest mysteries of the greatest truths of human existence. We are literally wired, I'm going to be personal, you are wired to thrive in life and to begin healing of your body. You begin the moment that you're born, and you can embrace that at any time in your life. I'm going to go back to a philosophy that's 2,000 years old. How many are familiar with the ancient Essenes? E-S-S-E-N-E-S. Anybody heard of the Essenes? Anybody never heard of the Essenes? Thank you for your honesty. The Essenes are a mysterious sect. They showed up about 500 years before the time of Jesus. They are believed to be the scribes of the Dead Sea Scrolls, maybe not the authors. They wrote them, they're not sure that they originated them. Whole mystery around that. Jesus of Nazareth was an Essene. Mary Magdalene was an Essene. They were of Essene traditions. In Egypt, the Essenes were noted because of their abilities to heal. And they were not called Essenes. They were called therapeutae because they knew how to heal. They knew about herbs, they knew about the body, they knew about breath, and they knew about diet. When the Dead Sea Scrolls were found and the Nag Hammadi Library were discovered in the 20th century, 1940s, the Dead Sea Scrolls were the oldest records of the Old Testament and the Torah known to exist. The Nag Hammadi Library is the oldest record of the New Testament, including the books that were excluded by the church in the 4th century. This is how we know they were excluded, because they were found in the Nag Hammadi Library. Among those texts in the Vatican Library are a series of books that were written by the Essenes that were excluded from the biblical canon in the 4th century. Among those books are direct teachings from the Master, Jesus, to his students. So I'm going to talk about Jesus not as a religious or a spiritual figure, but as a learned man, a very learned individual. The 18 missing years that are missing are not missing. They're missing because those books were taken away. In those 18 years, the man that we know as Jesus of Nazareth, he left Nazareth, he studied and mastered a number of spiritual traditions. When I'm in Tibet, they know him as Isa. He studied and mastered the Buddhist traditions. In Egypt, he studied and mastered the traditions of Osiris And all of those were incorporated into his philosophy. And I'm saying this because it all boils down to the most beautiful and most simple and most common sense philosophy that has withstood the test of time, that means just as much now as it did 2,000 years ago. And I'd like to share that with you. Okay, do you feel like you're looking at ancient text? Oh, me too. It's so mysterious. By the way, when we go to the Holy Land tours, we go to the place where the Essenes lived and worked, and it truly is an amazing place. It's not available now, not possible, but we do. So here's from Jesus of Nazareth, the Gospel of Peace. It's called the Essene Gospel of Peace. Was the copy of the book from the Vatican Library that was transcribed early in the 20th century. Jesus' students said, "What should we eat?" The master said to them, "That which kills your food kills also your body. That which gives life to your food also gives life to your body. Therefore, eat only that which gives life to your body." There you go. The things that destroy your food before it enters your body cannot be good for your body. It's not going to do your body any good. So what he's saying is the closer you can find your food to its natural source, not from a machine, not from a factory, not from something that's been mixed with other things and put into a package. But the closer you find your food to its natural state, the more benefit, the more life that food will bring to your body. Now, after he states this, he goes on to elaborate tremendously, page after page. But this is how he begins that sermon, that lecture. That which kills your food kills also your body. Think about that. When you cook with bad oils, when you put in additives, when you put in preservatives, in that food, they're not good for your body. But the things that give life to your food, the enzymes, the proteins, the nutrients that we're talking about, is going to give life to your body. It makes total sense. Eat simple, eat seldom, eat smaller portions, and eat only what comes from our Mother Earth, Father in Heaven's garden, what grows in the ground or walks on the earth. And that's my rule. I'm not, when I'm in a plane at 40,000 feet above sea level, if that is not available, I will eat whatever is available. And the promise to my body is that when I land and get the opportunity to choose, I will choose that which gives life to my body. So it's not like I would starve myself. And I'm not that rigid, but I am disciplined. I am a disciplined man. And I have to be at my best. For you and for myself. I want to be good for me as well. My promise, we talked about this in the green room, my promise is to be at my best when I'm here with you, because your promise was to come here and be with me. To be focused, not have a million other things going on in the background. All that exists when I'm with you, I don't even look at the days, the numbers of the days. All that exists is you and me in this time together right now. And that's why we're here. Does this make sense to you? You okay with this? Beautiful philosophy, isn't it? There are statements in some traditions that are attributed to Jesus that may not be Jesus. The Essene Gospels, I trust these because of the source. I knew the family of the man that transcribed these. He was a researcher in the Vatican researching something else. He came across these. The Vatican didn't want them published. The whole story behind that, but it makes total sense. Cyclic aging is the constant replenishing of physiological regeneration. Do you feel like you have at least a better understanding of how to physiologically regenerate your body? Do you feel that? Do you have any tools to be able to do that? Pure human technology is what we're talking about. Do you want to use AI and machines to prolong your life, or do you want to access pure human technology and transcend what the machines can do? Anything those machines can do for you, your body does better. And now you're beginning to understand this. How in the world did this mechanism come together? And it's layers upon layers upon layers of sophisticated, technologically advanced, soft technology. It's easy to build wires and chips. How do you build neurons and the chemical potentials across cell membranes for ion generators? I mean, you just go on and on. Stem cells, little packets of information that will give life to the organism all through the life of the organism. Telomeres that are so intelligent, they know when to work and when not to, so they don't perpetuate the life of an unhealthy cell. You are such an amazing being. Now you know you can take chemicals, you can take the wires, we can do the transhumanism if we want, but we don't need to. All right? We've gone through all of these. I asked you a question earlier. We are the technology. We are the technology we've been waiting for. That transhumanism is just reminding us of who we are. So I asked you a question earlier, and I'm going to answer the question. You remember that man right there? Remember the good old days? We thought things were tough then. How many people would like to go back to the good old days of earlier presidents? At least it was entertaining. We had entertaining presidents. This president, Bill Clinton, June 26, the year 2000, Bill Clinton did something that no president had ever done. And it's not what you think. I could see that look. He stood with a scientist at a podium and made an announcement that forever changed the way we would think about ourselves. He announced the completion of the Human Genome Project. However, at the same time, he also opened the door to one of the greatest disappointments and one of the deepest mysteries of science that has yet to be fully resolved. Because the Human Genome Project revealed a flaw in scientific thinking that scientists struggled with for a long time. Here's the flaw. First of all, what is the Human Genome Project? It was from 1990, 2008. This is the Universal Declaration on the Human Genome and Human Rights. I'll just read it to you right here. The human genome underlies the fundamental unity of all members of the human family. They thought it would bring us together, as well as the recognition of their inherent dignity and diversity. In a symbolic sense, it is the heritage, the collective heritage of humankind. What an awesome project. There was a thinking in the science, and I was part of this because I was in the scientific community. Pre-genome, pre-2000, the thinking was this, that one gene in the body creates one protein. All right, for every protein in the body, we are made of proteins. It had to be one gene to create that protein. So here's the problem. The human body has more than 100,000 proteins. So the scientists were like frothing at the mouth in excitement. They said 100,000 proteins. That means we're going to find 100,000 genes. We can patent every one of those. We can now build drugs, 100,000 new drugs to address the problems of every one of those genes. We're home free. That's not what happened. Here's what happened. At one gene per protein, they expected at least 100,000 genes would be discovered, but look at this. The human genome only has about 24,000 genes. That's it. That's not an error of just a little bit. That is an error magnitudes off of what they expected. 24, we are such a complex form of life. For example, look at this. Here's a common mouse. Common mouse has 25,000 genes. It has more genes than we do, but we're more complex life. Look at this. A fly has 14,000 genes. Where's our genes? We're more complex. This is what scientists are saying. Where's ours? Where's our genes? 24,000 genes. Well, here is the mind blower. This is what happened. The answer is where we find our unique, pure human power. This is what sets you apart from all other forms of life, because what I'm going to show you is possible you can do consciously on demand when you choose. Here it is right here. Discovery number 23. What scientists found is this, that the genes are not static, they're not fixed, that human genes are plastic, they are dynamic, they shift in response to the environment. What that means What that means is that one gene can program as many as 100 different proteins. It's not one gene per protein. One gene can program as many as 100 different proteins. Think about that. That is epigenetics. Because the programming, this is where we're going with this. This is why the 24,000 genes in the human body can produce 400,000. We've got over 400,000 proteins. All right? From 24,000 genes, this is why it's possible. Because those 24,000 genes can shift and change and program differently, and they can do it on the fly. They can do it on demand. It's not set in stone when you were born or when you're conceived in your mother's womb. You come into the world, it's what I call the factory preset. So in the factory of the mother's womb, our mother's womb, we have a certain number of genes that get us going. You are not locked into those genes. They change whether you're aware of it or not, and because they do, you can intervene and change them to an even greater degree. This is epigenetics. It's what Bruce found with the stem cells in his early research. But the epigenetics goes further than we have understood in the past. The new science of epigenetics, it says just that. It says that the genes are influenced. The many different translations, I'm not going to go into that detail, many different translations, this takes us from the path of victims to masters. Can you see how that would be? If you get only what you get at conception, you are stuck with it. If you got good genes, cool. If you got genes you're not happy with, too bad. But that's not the case. And that makes you a very, very powerful being. Not only do we have plasticity at the biological level with organs and glands, not only do we have plasticity at the genetic level with DNA and genes, we have neuroplasticity with neurons. It's all about our ability to change and adapt. And now I'm going to show you, it goes even one step further. We even have the ability to continue producing through what is called neurogenesis, new neurons until the last breath of your life in this world. Look at this. Used to believe neurons were fixed at birth, that you have X number. We talked about this earlier. And over the span of your life, you lose neurons through lifestyle choices and environment. Not true. Neurons form throughout the entire lifetime. From the journal Neuroscience, look at this announcement that was made. The adult brain does grow new neurons after all. And here's where they come from, and the way they found this was the scan. Remember the scan I showed you earlier today? Revealing new information about the human brain. So look at this, the new neurons, 2019, right before COVID is when this was discovered. This is new, really new stuff. Not even 2 years old yet. Published in the journal Scientific American, March of 19. So it is now, we're March, so it's 2 years old. The new neurons, they form in the hippocampus of the brain. And they are constantly emerging. Movement, exercise stimulate this. Nutrition, new thought patterns all stimulate these neurons. We choose the gene programs. Discovery number 24. I asked you a question earlier. Is there a nutrient that transcends the limitations of all those other nutrients when it comes to longevity, to healing, to rejuvenation, to regeneration? And the answer is yes. And it's not a supplement you take in your mouth. It's an experience that's based in your heart. And that is where we're going to go right now. Okay? So for the rest of this segment and into the next segment, this is what I want to talk about. Soon, some of you have seen me talk about this before. 1991, scientists discovered over 40,000 specialized cells in the human heart that were not expected. We talked about it yesterday, and we actually accessed some of those cells. Those cells, sensory neurites, they think, they learn, they remember, they feel, and they access heart intelligence independently of the cranial brain, completely separate, however, working with the cranial brain. Our soft technology, this is what we did not get to yesterday. We know that we have neurons in the brain. We know that we have neurons in the heart. You are the only form of life that has the ability to harmonize the neurons in the heart and the neurons in the brain into a single potent system. 2 organs, 1 system. When you harmonize the heart and the brain, it's called coherence. The optimum coherence is a very low frequency. It's not even 1 hertz. It's 0.1 hertz. When you create the conditions in your body that allow 0.01 hertz, that is when you are at your best. Everything is connected in your body. Now I want to show you why this coherence is so important. We talked earlier about side effects with pharmaceuticals, side effects with nutrition, with anything. I want to show you why side effects are so important. That is the latest map of the interconnectivity of the metabolic functions in the human body. Can you read that map? Neither can anybody else. Because we are so complex. Look at how, from this, you can see why it's impossible to introduce a pharmaceutical into your body and not have that or a nutrient or a supplement. It's not just about drugs. Anything in your body that you introduce, it is going to influence other systems. If everything is connected, it means that when you create coherence between your heart and your brain, it's not limited to your heart and your brain. What else is influenced by the coherence? You tell me. Everything. This is the most powerful nutrient that you can give to your body. Because when you create coherence between the heart and the brain, and everything is connected the way it is, look at what happens. You directly awaken super longevity because that coherence relieves the stress that prevents the telomerase from doing its job. It allows the telomerase to become active, relieving that stress, all right? Stress that you know, stress that you don't know. Heart-brain harmony, super immune response. When I was working with the researchers at the Institute of Heart Math, they sent saliva samples out to independent laboratories for evaluation after the participants had been trained to do what we're about to do in here today. The labs called the scientists and they said, "What is this antibiotic that you guys are working with? We've never seen anything like this." The scientists said, "There is no antibiotic. This is SIGA. It's the first line of response in the human body, the immune response." They said, "We're using the body's natural responses." And the researcher said, "No way." They said, "This can't happen. You're using a pharmaceutical. You just don't want to tell us what it is." It was more powerful than the antibiotics. SIGA is your first line of defense, the antibodies in your mouth. Heart-brain harmony stimulates that immune response. But if you want a strong immune system, this is the way to go. But it doesn't stop there. Direct access to heart intelligence. It triggers over 1,300 positive biochemical reactions. In the interest of time, I will not go through all 1,300, and you'll be glad that I don't. It doesn't stop there. Resilience. Resilience to change. Resilience is all about heart rate variability. If you want resilience to change, you have to have greater heart rate variability. You're going to create that for yourself in just a moment. Super intuition on demand. Super access to the subconscious on demand. If you're using affirmations to change your life, you've got to speak to your subconscious in a language it recognizes. You've got to communicate with the subconscious. Heart-brain coherence is a hotline to your subconscious with no hypnotism, with no altered states. A direct access to your subconscious. Super learning, super memory, we talked about this yesterday. Super HRV, super cognition, and much, much more. So you get the idea. This is one of the most powerful forms of self-regulation available to the human body. This is also the secret of some of the most ancient spiritual traditions, some of the most ancient occult traditions. This is what they would do. They would learn to access their body, and what you do with the power from your body is determined by your values, where you are in your life. just going through the process without doing anything else has passive benefits right here, just from if you do nothing else but 3 minutes of heart-brain coherence. The recorded benefits, you are automatically going to awaken telomeres, you're going to awaken the immune response, you're going to have, if you wanted that heart intelligence, you're going to trigger those 1,300 biochemical reactions and you'll create greater heart rate variability just from doing what we're about to do. That is the nutrient, the most powerful nutrient. It's not a pill or a tablet. It's energy, it's a field, it's breath, it's emotion, it's focus. That is pure human technology. Nothing else is needed. For the purposes of what we're doing here, for the purpose of our exploration of the divine matrix, it appears that there is a circular link of brain states leading to different states of consciousness, and they all give us specific kinds of access to specific places in the matrix. You achieve the brain state, and you tune into that place in the field. So it may be that what appears to be our deepest states of relaxation are actually the doorway to our most awakened states of awareness. So when we talk about the gamma brain state, for example, I'm going to go back to gamma because it is one of the most common brain states. We typically achieve gamma in our lives, averaging right around that 44 cycles per second. But we typically achieve it spontaneously. It seems to happen under certain conditions. And one of the first questions people ask me is, where does it come from and how do we create this state intentionally? I'm going to answer both questions right here. First of all, where does this gamma brain state come from? I want to be very clear, when I talk about gamma brain waves and gamma waves, these are very different than the gamma waves that we talk about in the cosmos. I'm not talking about cosmic gamma waves. It's the same terminology, but it's a completely different kind of wave. So I want to make that distinction here. The gamma brain wave originates from a tiny organ in the center of our brain. It's called the thalamus. From this tiny organ in the thalamus, it's in the center of the brain, just above the spinal column. These super fast waves, if you can imagine this, they shoot from the thalamus and they go to the front of the brain and the back of the brain and to the front of the brain again at this incredibly high speed of 40 times every second. 40, okay, that's second. 1001, that's second. Right there, 40 times. Gamma waves, if I were in the gamma state, would have pulsed from the front to the back to the front to the back of my brain again. Just to give you a sense for how fast this is, have you ever seen a hummingbird? Hummingbird's wings. We actually hear them before we see them. A hummingbird's wings beat at the rate of about 50 times per second. So this gamma brain state is just a little bit slower than the hummingbird's wings. And that really helps to give me some sense for how amazing this state is. But as these waves, not only are they moving very quickly through the brain, now listen to what they're doing. It's not that they are in a narrow focus from the front to the back, front to the back. They are all-encompassing. It's called a sweeping wave. The gamma wave sweeps through all of the lobes of the brain, the front and the back, and that is why it is also called a unifying brain wave. It offers the experience of a number of different potentials, and one of those is this unifying experience. When people are in gamma, they seem to feel less separate from the world. And I'll just share with you why. If you are able to see the scans, the brain scans, there's a part of our brain just above the occipital area that lights up when we sense that we are somewhere in a place in time. It is our awareness of space. So when we say, we're anchored in this moment in time, in this space, we're present in the here and now, that part of the brain is very active. In the gamma brain state, what the scans show is that part of the brain becomes less active because we're not so attached to the space and the place. We become more of the essence of our environment. And this is the unity consciousness. and it exemplifies one of the benefits. Why would we want to access a gamma brain state? Let me just go through a list. Some of the benefits from the gamma brain state, and let's talk about how we can achieve a gamma brain state in our lives. When we are in the gamma brain state, we, as I said, we achieve this sense of unity consciousness. And this is something that the monks talk about all the time, the Tibetan monks and nuns, and the abbots, the higher order monks. We achieve super cognitive enhancement and super memory recall. If you've ever seen any of the very popular movies based on Jason Bourne, the Jason Bourne series, and I call this the Jason Bourne brain state because our intelligence agencies are actually training agents to achieve this gamma brain state for many of the benefits that I'm sharing with you right now. Super fast learning. If you want to learn something really fast, if you want to learn a language very quickly, if you want to memorize information in a book. And when I was in college, and I shared this in an earlier episode, I had full credit, 19 credits in my earth sciences major. I was paying out-of-state tuition. I had no money. I was working 3 jobs. One of those jobs was a job that lasted from midnight until 8 a.m. and my first class was at 10. I didn't have a lot of time for sleep or homework. Now, I didn't know then the details and the science of what I'm saying to you. What I learned then was through my experiences with indigenous people and my own personal experimentation. I learned how to be able to absorb information very quickly. You can imagine in a science major, biology, it's all about phyla and species, and an earth sciences major, it's all about crystallography and mineralogy and crystal classes and x-axis and z-axis and y-axis and all those things. I had to memorize this stuff really fast. This technique that I'm going to share with you and this state is what gave me the ability to do that successfully. So super learning, super cognitive enhancement, super memory recall. We all take in the information, we have the ability to recall it. Super focus, really fast information processing. I mean, just like that. Gamma brain state is also a natural antidepressant. People who are in gamma, during the time they're in gamma, they're much calmer, and their body is not in the fight or flight mode, and it is not in the mode releasing the chemicals and the hormones that contribute to the depression. It also gives us access to the deepest states of intuition on demand, and this is the key. We all have intuition. Often our intuition happens when it happens. It happens when we're in the shower in the privacy of our own home and that very primal experience of water pouring over us. We have deep insights into our work or friendships or relationships. We get out of the shower and boom, they're gone. Where did they go? Or you're sitting at a traffic light waiting for a light to turn green and you don't know when that's going to happen, so you don't want to start anything. So it gets there, and it's in that openness when those insights come in. And then all of a sudden the light turns green and you're off looking at the vehicle in front of you or checking your rearview mirror, and those insights are gone. Those are spontaneous. How do you achieve that when you want it the most? On demand, gamma is the answer to that. And much more. And because of the link between the gamma brain state, high gamma brain state, and theta, where the healing happens, there's a direct link. Some of our deepest states of healing begin in the gamma brain state. So I'm just giving you some examples of how powerful this state is and why we would want to access this very powerful state on demand. So with all these benefits in mind, the obvious question is, how do we do it? How do we access this powerful state of consciousness? And this is one of those places where my direct experience in Tibet give me the opportunity to answer this question firsthand. So in season 1 of this series of Missing Links, I described the 1991 discovery of the 40,000 specialized cells in the human heart, sensory neurites, that are focused in the heart in a way that is called the little brain of the heart. It is a neural network, but it's not in the brain, it's in the heart. These sensory neurites are essentially brain cells, but they're not in the brain, but they function the way that brain cells do. They think, they feel, they remember independently of our cranial brain. And when I shared that with you, I also opened the door to the potential for the gamma brain state. Here's what I mean by that. In season 1, I shared a technique that's been developed in the laboratory that reflects what some of our most ancient and indigenous traditions have taught us about harmonizing the heart and the brain, 2 organs, into a single potent system in our body. So what we're really doing is we are harmonizing the neurons in the brain and the neurons in the heart. Two separate organs, the neurons are in two places. We're harmonizing them into a single potent system called heart-brain harmony, or more specifically, heart-brain coherence. So if this is new to you, I'm going to invite you to go back to season number 1 of Missing Links and check out the episodes where we're talking about harmonizing the heart and the brain and the specific techniques. I'm going to refer to them here, but I detail them, and I want you to know that detail is there. I'm not just glossing over this. So now that we understand that it's possible to harmonize the heart and the brain, and that through breath and focus, we may create this very, very powerful state of coherence between the heart and the brain. Coherence is defined as 0.1 hertz. When we can create a signal between the heart and the brain of 0.1 hertz, we are in this optimal place where our body senses that all systems are enabled. It's in this place where we are at our best. And this is no secret. Athletes at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs are using these techniques to optimize their physical performance at very high rates of metabolism. This isn't something you have to do when you're in a deep meditative state and completely relaxed. U.S. military is using the techniques, very techniques that I'm sharing with you now, to hone the focus of our men and women before they go into combat to optimize their opportunities for success, but also when they return from combat to help them to reintegrate into their homes and their families and leave the reflexes, the battlefield reflexes behind, serve them in the battlefield, but they don't necessarily serve them when they return to their homes. So this is an optimum state, all systems go, all right? Now, in this state, one of the techniques that I shared with you was to create an emotional experience, a feeling, and the feelings that I recommended from the laboratory, the Institute of Heart Math in Northern California is developing these techniques and honing these techniques so that we can do these things in our living room, so we don't have to go to a monastery in a mountaintop at high elevation half a world away to do it. One of the techniques that I offered was to feel the feeling, one of 4 feelings, to create that 0.1 hertz. Gratitude, appreciation, care, or compassion. Compassion is the key. Compassion is one of the doorways to the gamma brain state. When we are in compassion, now it makes perfect sense. When we're in this state of compassion, now that we know it's this sweeping wave, the state of compassion opens this realm of possibilities to the way that we think and we feel. Now, I just want to talk to you briefly about how we access compassion. In the West, compassion is often mistaken for a form of pity, where we feel sorry for another person. Well, in its truest sense, and when I'm working with the monks and the nuns and we were in Tibet through the translators, that's not the way they think of compassion. So let me talk to you about this just briefly. Compassion is the end of a sequence. The sequence begins with sympathy. When we are in sympathy, what we're saying is that we cannot even imagine what someone is going through, but we can sympathize with their hurt or sympathize with their pain. You get a sympathy card, and that's what it says. I can only imagine what you're going through, and it's very honest. So in sympathy, we are not experiencing the hurt or the pain, but we're acknowledging that hurt or pain in another person. It's the first step. The next step from sympathy is empathy. In empathy, we are actually feeling the pain of another person. Healthcare providers know this. When you work in an office as a doctor or a nurse practitioner, body worker, massage therapist, counselor, relationship therapist, physical therapy, anything like that, you automatically empathize with the people that you're with to better serve them. At the end of the day, if you've seen 10, 12, 15 people, they go home feeling better. And if you have not yet learned how to separate yourself from your empathy, you go home feeling maybe worse than you did when you came to work in the morning, because you're empathizing. What the brain scans actually show, that when we empathize with someone's pain, the pain centers in the brain of the person empathizing light up in the same places, but not to the same degree as they light up in the person having the hurt. So we say in empathy, I can empathize with your pain. I am experiencing that pain. The pain of the loss of a loved one or whatever that is. Second step to compassion. The third step is compassion. Compassion is a step beyond empathy. Now, I want to talk to you about compassion just for a minute and define it in maybe a little bit different way. Compassion is defined as an emotional experience where we first accept the suffering of another without judgment. This is a very Buddhist concept. Without judgment and without attachment to the outcome, to the rightness or the wrongness or the goodness or the badness. This is what gives compassion so much power. In the gamma brain state, the sweeping wave, it is sweeping all the lobes of the brain so that we are not anchored, we're not stuck in the rightness or the wrongness of what we're seeing, all right? So, compassion, we accept the suffering without judgment, we accept it without attachment to the outcome. But the third piece here is at the same time, we hold the focus for a greater possibility or a greater outcome. So we acknowledge what's happening without the judgment of what's happening while holding a space for a greater outcome. So there's a lot in there, there's a lot to think about. And for some people, I know it's a very different way of thinking about compassion. This is the way the Buddhist monks in Tibet define compassion. And it makes perfect sense because when we are able to do these things, think about this, when you're able to acknowledge what's happening without the attachment, so the attachment is the polarization, without the judgment of the rightness or the wrongness or the goodness or the badness, then you are not in the left brain, you're not in the right brain, you are able to move into something beyond, to transcend the judgment, and this is where the gamma brain state comes in. Compassion is the key to the gamma brain state. Compassion is the ancient science that leads us directly into that gamma brain state. So I'm going to offer you a little formula that you can think of and carry in your lives when you want to optimize your opportunity for your greatest potentials. And the formula is simply this: heart-brain coherence plus the gamma brain state equals all systems go. When you create the heart-brain coherence and into that space of coherence, you drop the gamma state of consciousness. Now you have become a very different person. You have transcended the judgments of your peers, of your society, of your culture, of your family, and you are opening the door to a deep, deep, deep communication with the field of energy, the divine matrix, and that is where your mastery begins. So it's from this place of extraordinary abilities that we actually learn to hack the matrix. We learn to hack the matrix as we are no longer subject to the laws of physics as we know them today. We're no longer confined to the limits of space and time. It's from this place where we create the prayers that influence the healing of our bodies in a very powerful, very profound way, as well as the world beyond our bodies.